But I want to bring my next guest on. I am joined with the man himself, a favorite of mine to talk to because Caleb is just you know some of everything about some of everywhere. Caleb Maupin, speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst, and author. Um, Caleb, oh, also the Center for Political Innovation. That is the organization that Caleb works with, and if I'm not mistaken, created. How you doing, Caleb? You doing okay?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I am doing all right. Um, Black pilled, but I'm doing great. A question for you: Venezuela. Venezuela is mind-boggling. President of Peace is looking at war in multiple theaters, continuing the war in Ukraine, trying to initiate a war in Israel. I'm sorry, in Iran, and trying to initiate a war in Venezuela. It doesn't come across as the president of peace to me. Or
Well,
correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, that thing is very interesting because Venezuela has long been a target of the United States ever since, Hugo Chavez was elected, the anti-imperialist leader, took the country toward
Yes.
21st century socialism. Marco Rubio, in particular, he is a Miami Cuban. He's in with that crowd that is very much obsessed with opposing socialism in Latin America. And Trump has moved the military, the fleet, close to Venezuela, and that's what set off the alarms. And then that caused Fox News and the entire Trumposphere to just go into an anti-communist, anti-Venezuela overdrive, etc. But I noticed a very interesting message from Laura Loomer, and Laura Loomer is just an awful Zionist within the Trump camp. But did you
Yes.
see her statement about Venezuela?
I did not.
She said that she knows that this is fake because the USA is currently negotiating with Maduro to free the hostages in Gaza, and that apparently Maduro is functioning as a back channel between the United States and Hamas. And that this whole event is just completely fake. And as far as she's concerned, this is just Fox News is not representing what's actually going on inside the White House, and that she doesn't appreciate it and all of this. And she, Laura Loomer would know. She's apparently pretty close to the president. She's not a great person in a lot of ways, but she maintains that that actually Maduro and the White House are working together to get the hostages free. So I saw that and I was like, that's interesting. The main thing that
Caleb.
I've noticed that's weird about Venezuela is that, it's 4,000 U.S. Marines that are off the coast of
Right.
Venezuela, 4,000. Venezuela has Bolivarian militias of 4 million people ready to fight them. So if you're going to invade the country and they got 4 million people armed and ready to protect it, in addition to the standing military, you're going to need a lot more than 4,000 troops. So
Mhm.
what exactly is going on here? China says they've got Venezuela's back. Russia says they've got Venezuela's back. Iran says they've got Venezuela's back. So for Trump to actually jump in, he's going to need a lot more than 4,000 troops. So yeah, this whole thing is just very, very, very odd.
So, all right. So, this is what Rubio said early on. I'm going to play this clip because this gives context to what's in these people's minds. As you pointed out, they were trying to get Venezuela for a very long time. They put a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head. There's that. And now you have 3 warships off the coast of Venezuela with air power and everything else.
Agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us to get those concessions. And now they have these general licenses where companies like Chevron are actually providing billions of dollars of money into the regime's coffers. And the regime kept none of the promises that they made. So all that needs to be re-explored. Because in Venezuela, you have the Russian presence, you have a very strong Iranian presence. The Iranians, in fact, are beginning to build drone factories for the manufacture of Iranian drones in our own hemisphere. Not to mention the long practice of the Venezuelan regime of providing real but illegitimate passports to operatives for Hezbollah in our own hemisphere. And lastly, and I leave it lastly to Cuba, agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us.
So, part of what Rubio is trying to argue here is just mind-blowingly hypocritical. Now, I used to make this argument that if the Russians overthrew the government of Mexico, put in missiles, raise the military. You have Mexico saying we're going to take part of our country back, all this stuff. The United States would go bananas. The United States would not take the position that, well, Mexico is an independent country, it can do whatever it wants. If it wants to build up a huge military at the border, it can do that. They're a sovereign state. They would never say that. Rubio, and I'm saying that to say the Russians going in for the special military operation into Ukraine, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. We don't care if they were killing ethnic Russian Ukrainians. We don't care if Ukraine was building this huge military at the border. Meaning, this is a similar situation that Rubio is trying to portray, with the United States taking a completely different action. I'm saying the hypocrisy is off the table, off the scale. The other part to this is the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians are also in Venezuela helping Maduro. We don't like it. And we don't think the elections were legit. Again, I don't know why that's U.S. business, but whatever. And so now you have this, what seems to be a potential and threatened military action against Venezuela, even if it's just 4,000 troops. The level of air power and whatnot the United States can bring to bear is astonishing. We have a magnificent capability of murdering people. So I feel you, 4,000 is not a lot. I agreed. I have a hard time believing that they're there with Venezuela being a back channel to Hamas. I don't even see the links. I don't see the connection. It's a world away. What am I missing in this, if that's true?
Well, I mean, it's awful, obviously, to threaten Venezuela the way Venezuela is being threatened. And I mean, this is a neocon. In particular, we saw in Trump's last administration, they came about as close as they'd ever come to straight up invading Venezuela. You'll remember the food truck incident, right? Where they basically, and it was like a false flag in real time. I mean, before the whole world. So they had this food truck on the Colombian border. They were going to cross into Venezuela, and they lit their own food truck on fire. And then they reported Maduro lit the food truck on fire. Now we have to invade. And there was like literal video footage showing that it was them who lit their own food truck on fire. And the New York Times and others ran with it, and I guess it was Gray Zone who was out on the scene and actually filmed that it was the New York Times who it was their local people who lit it on fire, so they didn't light their own food truck on fire, and they weren't able to go in and invade. There have been many coup attempts in Venezuela against the government of Maduro, and they've failed, because the military is very, very loyal to Maduro. And they have tried a lot of provocations. I mean, things were the worst probably in Venezuela in terms of the food crisis, et cetera, in 2015, right as Obama was leaving office. That's when I visited Venezuela, and I was there at the height of that. And yeah, they're just not going to be overthrown. And it's just not going to happen, right? Maduro is very strong, and he's a very effective political leader. And he's gotten the country through the worst of it, and their economy is growing now, and the food crisis is over. They're producing their own food domestically. They've got a good relationship with Iran, with Russia, and China, and their economy is getting stronger, and their oil production is increasing. And that seems to be what many people suspect is the real reason for this threat, is that oil production in Venezuela is rising significantly at this point. And so they're a competitor on the oil markets in a way that they hadn't been for a while, right? Because of the sanctions, because of everything. It looked like for a while they were not really competing with the United States because the sanctions had such a devastating effect. Now they're competing again. And so, you heard what Marco Rubio said there about Chevron. These oil companies are bringing money into the coffers of the regime, right? And it's like, yeah, Venezuela is becoming a competitor again. They're a competitor on the oil markets, right? And they got to be put on their place, just like Russia is, a huge oil exporting country, just like Libya was the top oil exporter in Africa before it was destroyed, just like Iraq under Saddam Hussein was a big oil exporting country, just like Iran is a major oil exporting country in the Middle East. I mean, it's like they don't want competition on the energy markets, and Venezuela is a huge oil producing country, and they took control of their oil resources with Hugo Chavez, and they used oil and energy revenue to rebuild their economy and make their economy very, very strong during the early years of the 20th century. And so then Obama dropped the oil prices very dramatically starting in 2014, and you had the oil price drop. And there was hope that they could overthrow Venezuela during that time. They had La Salida, and they had all these campaigns and all these celebrities talking about, oh, we got to bring down the regime, but it didn't work. The people stood by it. And then things in Venezuela have been getting progressively better since then. And there was a big try in Trump's first administration that completely flopped, just didn't work. And now we're in Trump's second administration, and they've got some troops there. And what I guess I should say, disappointed with is seeing people in the Trump camp that should know better, people like Alex Jones and others, just kind of, performatively putting this on, and that this is very much, I'm somebody who comes out of the left, and I'm pretty hated in leftist circles, but I come out of the left. That's my political background. And I hear the way Trumpers talk about communism. I mean, every podcast you ever heard from a conservative, I could make a conservative podcast, a Jordan Peterson, Laura Loomer, Candace Owens podcast right here. This is all you have to do, right? Is you start talking about woke people being annoying. Right. I agree with that part. Right. Woke people can be very annoying. Right. As you start talking about woke people being annoying, then you just pull up some old Cold War communist, communism killed a gajillion billion people, and everywhere that's ever had communism has been starving and all of that. Woke people are communists. Democrats are woke people, are communists. That's very bad. That's the level of political education that goes on the right. And with that level of political education, I mean, that's just, there's so many things wrong with that. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I've actually been to Marxist, Leninist, and communist countries. They're not woke in any way. I mean, it just doesn't match, right? So that doesn't line up at all, right? But that's your typical Trumpers education. So Venezuela is literally, a Marxist government. They quote Marx and Lenin and, Stalin, and, they consider their revolution to be modeled on the Cuban Revolution and Che Guevara and stuff. So, Trumpers are psyched up to hate communism. They think Biden's a communist. They think, college kids that talk about pronouns are all communists. And so it's part of the conservative script. And it's disappointing to see because, a lot of a lot of the right-wing populists are critical of war in a lot of ways, but they've just been, spoon-fed this brainworm about communism. And it's frustrating to see. So, yeah, I mean, I look at this and I just, I'd be happy to, argue with anybody about it, debate people about it if they want. But yeah, I mean, what they think they know about wokeism, what they think they know about communism is absolutely wrong. And it has nothing to do with Venezuela. There's no gay marriage in Venezuela. Did you know that? Abortion is illegal in Venezuela, right? So it's like you're trying to tell me that the college kids that you hate as a conservative are the same as Venezuela. And that's why the USA should invade them and have a regime change war. I mean, you're just wrong. I mean, they don't know what they're talking about.
I mean, I don't get the argument for invasion at all. What business is this of ours? This is the Iran thing, right?
Right. Why? And they're all concerned about refugees, right? I mean, how many, you think we have problems with people coming over our border now? Imagine if you overthrow and destabilize a government, a major government in South America. If a country like Venezuela gets toppled and all the people are fleeing and there's instability and people and all of that. I mean, and the claims about a narco state. Oh,
that's what I want.
Yeah, that's
just to interrupt for a moment. That's what I wanted to hit with you also.
Yeah.
So the New York Times, I could pull up the article. It's like, well, the Trump administration says it's concerned about drugs flooding into America. And so Trump will do any and everything in his power, including using military force, in order to go after states where they believe that this is a drug cartel, and claiming that Maduro is the head of that drug cartel. And so we have a $50 million bounty on his head to try to remove him from office. Oh, and by the way, here's a military at that border.
So we invaded Colombia first because that's the major source of cocaine, right? Colombia. And then we invaded Guatemala, which has been run by drug cartels. We invaded Honduras, that's been run by drug cartels since Hillary Clinton toppled the government in 2009 and removed Manuel Zelaya. I mean, then we invade. I mean, it's like Venezuela, of all the countries in South and Central America with a drug problem, Venezuela is like the last one that you should consider the source of the problem. Are there drugs in Venezuela? I'm sure. Are there people that use them? Sure. Are there criminal organizations? Probably. But of all the countries in that region, all the countries south of the border that have a drug problem, they're probably the last one that should be on the list. So, I mean, that's, anyone who knows anything about what's going on there, I mean, a lot more drugs are coming here from Colombia. A lot more drugs are coming here from Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala. I mean, this is I mean, yeah, that's just it's very selective, right? Venezuela's got oil, is what they've got. They not much cocaine coming out of Venezuela.
What is so? This is an infographic that was put up online trying to show this massive oil reserves that are under Venezuela. And as you point out, this is direct competition with the U.S.'s oil, all things being equal, and getting your hands on oil is getting your hands on oil. If you can knock over the government, put in some kind of stooge, have a military presence or have a U.S. presence there that can effectively exploit the resources, then obviously they want to do that. Kick out China, kick out Russia, kick out Iran, etc. So there's multiple reasons, right? All of these go into U.S. quote unquote interests as a justification for doing this, with drugs being the stalking horse. That's the mask that is over the actual reality of reasons for going after Venezuela. I am curious on this other thing too. When you were what was your experience in Venezuela? Because I've never been. I've never had the opportunity to go. What is the perspective of people towards Maduro? Because I've heard multiple, let's say, points of view on how Venezuelans view Maduro and whether or not they will be willing to back and support the Venezuelan government if indeed the U.S. took some kind of provocative kinetic action against the government.
Well, the USA has already done that multiple times, but I mean, I'll tell you, when I was there in 2015, it was a time where they were having a real hardship because Hugo Chavez had died. Nicolas Maduro had come into office, elected as his successor, and Obama had dramatically dropped the oil prices, and they were having a rough time. And I was there when the National Assembly, the parliament, kind of went over to the opposition. They voted in the opposition in the National Assembly. But even then, and this is what I wish people could understand, even then, I did not hear people saying they wanted to have capitalism. I did not hear people saying they wanted to go back to the way things were before Hugo Chavez. I talked to Venezuelans, many of whom who voted for the opposition, and they said, we're socialists too. We are just frustrated with Maduro. We want things to be, we want Maduro to operate this way. We're frustrated with corruption and nepotism in the ruling party, and that the people who voted for the opposition, they were not anti-communist or anti-socialist. It was just they were frustrated with Maduro. They were sending a message to Maduro. They were frustrated. And then there was a solid core of people that are loyal to Maduro till the end. And that was made clear to me. There were people that, when I went to Central Caracas, to the colectivos and the communes, there's a layer of, very, very poor and dark-skinned indigenous folks who really, until Hugo Chavez came along, these folks didn't have literacy. They didn't have anything. They didn't have electricity. And those folks will go down fighting till the end. I interviewed a woman in, khaki military pants who had been a homeless child. And, you talk to those folks, there's a layer of people there that are really, really loyal to Maduro. And that's why he's in power, right? You can talk about like a third, and that's, I've noticed a lot of these countries that are anti-imperialist are like that, right? And it's kind of an interesting way of doing things, but it's like, there's a third of people, I would say in Venezuela, that are anti-Maduro, that, that they watch Western media, they consume Western television and stuff, and they think, oh, Maduro's no good. They believe what they see on Western television. Then there's a third of people that are like, you know what? Maduro's better than what was here before. He's doing an okay job. They're not like huge enthusiastic supporters, but, they see that the country has improved, the literacy programs or whatever. They might have their complaint about this or that, and they're not really that involved in things, but whatever. And then you have a third of people that are just really, really enthusiastic supporters that live in a collectivo, that live in a commune, that are, work in a job, maybe in the government sector. They're a member of a labor union that is pro-Maduro affiliated. And those folks will go down fighting to the end. They're a part of a Bolivarian militia. They go out and practice shooting in their neighborhood, and they're part of a neighborhood community militia. And they've got a picture of Che Guevara or Fidel Castro in their house, and they are ready to, they're saying, stay out, Yankee, and bring it on, and those folks. And that's why Maduro is still in power. It's kind of interesting, right? It's like you have a layer of the population that are just fanatical and ready to die for it, and armed and militarized and involved in this kind of, huge network of government supporters that's been built, right? I mean, they have these Bolivarian circles in every neighborhood. That's what one of the things Hugo Chavez did, is he built these Bolivarian circles, and that really Maduro relies on this very well organized network of people who are very, very dedicated to the revolution and very dedicated to carrying out the policies of the United Socialist Party. And because of that, he's able to stay in power. And that his inner circle, there have been a couple attempted coups, but people don't go for them. The military of Venezuela is trained in Cuba, which is very interesting. They send the soldiers to Cuba for their military training. And the military is probably the most pro-government section, the most pro-Marxist and socialist wing. I mean, is that part of their education is they learn all about the Cuban Revolution, they learn all about Fidel Castro, and the military is basically kind of a bastion of anti-imperialism, and the military is very solidly behind Maduro. They were with Hugo Chavez. Chavez was a paratrooper. He came out of the military, and that they're pretty solid as a state. And if they were going to fall, they would have fallen in 2015. I mean, that was the moment where they didn't have toilet paper, where, you know, that they were having trouble importing food. That's when they were really suffering in 2015. Now things in Venezuela have really, really gotten better. I will say that the opposition, it's kind of interesting. The opposition in Venezuela had to do kind of a rebrand, and Barack Obama was a really big part of that, because there is a layer of people, Marco Rubio, the people he hangs out with, they're never going to come to power in Venezuela. They're just the most hated. You know, there's a lot of very, very light-skinned, wealthy, anti-communist people in Latin America. They're a minority now, especially now that, you know, the people that, you know, didn't, it used to be that indigenous folks didn't vote. People that lived in the countryside, they didn't vote. The reason Hugo Chavez and Maduro were able to kind of rise in popularity is because big sections of the population that were kind of locked out politically, they were just kind of illiterate and living in the countryside. Now those folks have literacy, they have electricity, and they vote. You know, and so the demographics have changed. And there's a layer of, like, you know, people that are at the top of South and Central American countries that are light skinned, that are wealthy, that are obnoxiously racist, obnoxiously anti-communist. And that used to be who America aligned itself with in the region. And those folks are outvoted. And they're never, and there's a guy named Leopoldo Lopez, who's a big, you know, oppositionist associated with Venezuela. You'll hear CNN talk about, oh, he's being persecuted and all that. He will never win an election. Those folks are really, really obnoxious. And I mean, when you listen to them talk, I mean, they are just, you know, they're always going to, they're hated by the majority of the population. They are blatantly classist. You know, when I was in college, you know, Lula da Silva was the president of Brazil. Yes. And there were a number of, you know, kind of wealthy Brazilian students at my college. And I remember I asked them, I said, well, you know, what do you think of Lula da Silva? And they said, oh, he's horrible. Can you believe this? Oh, he's the worst president Brazil's ever had. Did you know that he used to be a UPS delivery man? He delivered packages. Oh, Brazil, people think we're a poor country. We got a UPS delivery man as our president. Oh, he's horrible. And I said, well, you know, I said, that, okay. And they said, well, I said, if he's so bad, why does he win the elections? And they said, because all these people who have no business voting vote, because in Brazil we have this law that everyone has to vote, and so all these people who haven't graduated high school and all these people who aren't smart like us, they go out and vote, and and they shouldn't be voting. They don't understand politics. And I said, okay. And I said, well, why do they vote for Lula da Silva? And they said, because he gives them all jobs. He gives them all jobs. He uses the government, and they all have jobs now, and so they thank Lula da Silva for it. And it's like, you know, it's like that, those kind of folks, right? That used to be who America lined itself up. There's a layer of people from Latin America that are like that, right? Where it's just their argument against Hugo Chavez was that he was part Afro-Venezuelan, right? He has, you know, Afro-Venezuelan heritage. Oh my God, we can't have that, right? You know, and that he was a paratrooper. He wasn't a general or something. He was a paratrooper. He's from the, you know, they're just classist, right? They kind of did a reboot with Enrique Capriles and with some of the new folks. And, you know, we have this president of Colombia, with this president of Chile, where they've kind of like created a new layer of people that talk left, but are not anti-imperialist, right? Nicolas Maduro is a solid anti-imperialist, you know, and Hugo Chavez was, you know, supporting Iran, was supporting China, was solidly anti-imperialist. Now they've created kind of a fake left of Latin America, right? That is not anti-imperialist, but also doesn't talk the way those people talked, right? That says, okay, yeah, we need to help. We need programs for low-income people. Yeah, we need to have concern about people that are impoverished, but Maduro's a dictator, but Russia and China are bad. America's got problems, but we can work with them. And that was really what Obama did, is he kind of changed who the USA was supporting in Latin America to supporting like a layer of like foundation funded, like fake leftists, rather than that obnoxious Latin American right wing that is just so hated throughout the continent. That is associated with a huge body count, right? I mean,
these people are fascists.
Pinochet rounded up 20,000 people in a sports stadium and tortured them, when he was brought to power. The Contras of Nicaragua, they're, talking about drug dealers. They're the people that brought cocaine to the United States, but they also killed, thousands and thousands of people. They targeted the Catholic Church because it was not sufficiently anti-communist, and murdered priests and nuns. There's all kinds of military dictatorships that the USA backed in Latin America, led by those folks. Those folks are just widely hated. So the traditional hard right wing of Latin America is out of favor. Obama maneuvered the United States into supporting kind of a fake left rather than supporting them. And that was kind of a game changer, but it still didn't result in toppling the government of Venezuela. It was very effective in destabilizing Bolivia, though. Bolivia, Evo Morales.
I was about to mention it. God, I was about to mention it.
Okay,
Evo Morales and the removal of him, and the fascists effectually taking over.
And that Latin American politics has significantly changed, and that in the 70s and 80s the USA backed a lot of these brutal military dictatorships. Cuba was backing kind of insurgent armed groups in the countryside that were fighting against those brutal military dictatorships. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a change in tactics where the focus became on building kind of a united front against neoliberalism. And that's how you got the election of Hugo Chavez. That's how the Sandinistas got reelected in Nicaragua. And you had an explosion with, the Kirchners in Argentina and with Evo Morales. Most of that's been rolled back, but Venezuela is solid because they took control of the military. They took control of the state. Nicaragua is also very solid for the same reason. They took control of the military. They took control of the state. But these other places where you had kind of socialists and leftists elected, Rafael Correa in Ecuador and elsewhere, they've been kind of pushed out, by this kind of tactical maneuver that Obama engineered.
That is, the Honduras, the Bolivia thing was rough. I remember when it happened, and they were dragging people through the streets and everything else. And, if you ever go, like Ecuador, it's another one where you have an indigenous community that is somewhat separate from the political space. And you may get, let's say, one or two good leaders in, but for the most part, you have drug cartels that are effectively taken over. You have the dismemberment of the state. What happened to Ecuador? God, man, that sucks so bad. I was there, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. Beautiful country. Oh, beautiful country. People were nice as can be. Yes, the heights of the mountains and everything else in Quito were a bit rough, but you get used to it. And then to find out, having guests on who live there, like executions of political figures, drug gangs that have run amok. I mean, it's such a sea change from where it was to where it is now. And so, I feel you on this. Many of the indigenous communities, whether in Mexico, whether in, I guess, all throughout South America, is marginalized on some level. They seem to hate the political leaders that bring in the indigenous community into the political space, whether that's in Brazil, whether that's in Bolivia, or whether that's in Venezuela, I suppose. I need to get into their mind then. 4,000 troops is obviously not enough to take over Venezuela. So what the hell is going on? If you had to guess.
I mean, it looks like they want something from Venezuela. This is a threat, right? They want something. They want Venezuela to do something. But also there seems to be a war going on within MAGA, right? And let's also talk about that, because it appears that, when Trump bombed Iran, Marjorie Taylor Greene was not thrilled about that. Obviously, Thomas Massie wasn't thrilled about that. We had, Elon Musk, had his kind of falling out and is no longer part of the Trump coalition, even though he was an essential part of Trump getting elected, And then now we have Tulsi Gabbard. She revealed that Russiagate was a complete hoax. That Russiagate was a fraud. And that laid the basis for Trump to start the negotiations in Alaska. And those negotiations started, but then Zelensky stopped them. Zelensky basically wouldn't make any concessions. So they're, but they're still going on, right? They're still, in place. But as of now, there's not any plan for Trump to set up a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Zelensky is kind of stalling things and is kind of holding that up. And in that context, all of a sudden we have U.S. Ships going towards Venezuela, and we have Alex Jones and a lot of the Trump camp beating their chest about communist regime in Venezuela so awful, just repeating standard anti-communist stuff of the Marco Rubio variety. And then we have China condemning that and saying they've got Venezuela's back, Russia saying they've got Venezuela's back, all of Venezuela's allies saying we've got your back. And I mean, I think that what's happening is that there's a war within MAGA. There is disagreement within the Trump administration about how to move forward with a lot of things, and that this is kind of the push and pull. And that this is like Trump is saying, okay, well, I'll threaten Venezuela. This is what the hawkish folks want. This is what the Marco Rubio crowd wants. He's throwing them a bone. And he's, continuing these negotiations with Russia, but then, and that there's a number of different forces within the Trump administration trying to get what they want. And that this is some kind of negotiation. And that's what makes me a little bit concerned. And I'll just throw this out there, right? I talked to people who were at January 6th, and they thought January 6th was just going to be a regular protest in Washington, D.C. And, one thing led to another, and all of a sudden people were in the Capitol, and then people were in prison. And we know that January 6th was basically set up so that they could have an excuse to have a crackdown as Trump was leaving office. You and I have both been to Washington, D.C. You can't just walk into the Capitol in the middle of a protest. That was kind of set up to happen. And Charlottesville was a similar thing, right? Some racist social media influencers thought they were going to just have a little rally, that it'd be surrounded by police and there'd be a bunch of protesters around them. And all of a sudden it went viral in all the Trump spaces, and a lot of, got a huge amount of publicity. And all of a sudden, people were coming to counter protest it from all over the world. And a bunch of people got taken to a spot where what would have been a small incident became a very, very big incident. And that was to create a narrative about Trump being a Nazi, et cetera, right? And that I am very, very concerned about two particular groups right now that need to be very careful, because if there's anything that'll set the negative side of MAGA going, it'll be some kind of false flag. They almost need some kind of January 6th or some kind of Charlottesville to psych the public up against them. And that is, I would urge the people in the anti-Israel wing of MAGA, the Nick Fuentes fans, the Candace Owens fans, and others, be very careful, right? Don't get set up, because I feel like they very much, if they can set up some kind of situation where those people are bad, those people are anti-Semitic, if they can set up some kind of situation that can turn the tide in favor of the Laura Loomer, pro-Israel crowd. And I also would urge people, there's a layer of people that are communists now. They call themselves communists, that are very vocally like, we are communists, waving red flags. They just have the communist identity. They're out there kind of, playing the character of communists, so to speak. I urge those people to also be very, very careful, because that is, the entire right wing has been psyched up in this narrative of communism is the enemy. And I've noticed that there are a couple groups that are kind of out there just kind of very publicly, waving hammers and sickles and stuff. I worry about them also being used in some kind of false flag to set the stage, because, you need a boogeyman, basically. The way they did what they did after January 6th was they used Trumpers, QAnon shaman, and QAnon and all of that as the boogeyman. They need a boogeyman. So don't be the boogeyman. Don't let them set you up in a situation where they can create kind of an incident. And that is my concern, because if I was in the Trump, camp, and I was in the pro-Israel, pro-regime change, pro-overthrow Maduro crowd, I would realize the only hope we've got is we got to stage some kind of false flag to just make the people who have the opposite position the most publicly hated. And I think that they may actively be planning to do something like that. And so I would urge people in both camps, both people that are really into communism, and both people that are anti-Israel MAGA, be very careful. Don't get set up because that seems to be the only hope they've got. That's really the only thing they can do to really push MAGA in a pro-war direction is they need some kind of, incident where they can just publicly demonize and make the people, that take the opposite position just widely hate it. And I mean, I will say Nick Fuentes is despicable, right? And he plays a very negative role. He's foul-mouthed. He's very openly racist. And the problem is that young men who listen to Nick Fuentes, they think that opposing Israel is great and showing that the Republican Party is beholden to Israel and all of that is great. And, he says good things about no war with Iran, etc. But then, you start listening to Nick Fuentes and you act like an asshole. And nobody likes an asshole, right? And that, I've met young men who get into the Nick Fuentes thing, and they just start acting like assholes because they kind of get pulled into this internet bubble where that's a funny, neat way to act. Everyone's gay, everyone's a faggot, everyone's, this is racist words and all of that. But it's like, you're an asshole to 90% of humanity who's not part of your little internet bubble. If you talk that way, you are an asshole. If you act that way, you are an asshole, and that Nick Fuentes gets people in this little bubble where they act like assholes and they become very, very obnoxious to almost everyone else they're around,
Agreed.
And, it's very weird. And that Nick Fuentes targets Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, if you're Nick Fuentes, you're an anti-Israel Republican, you would think Marjorie Taylor Greene would be who he absolutely likes. But he calls her Large Marge, right, and calls her fat, right? He brings up stuff about her, like she had an affair, or I don't even know what happened, stuff about her personal life that I don't give a shit about. You know what I'm saying? But he brings that up, right?
His issue with women.
Yeah.
His issue with women. He really does. The Candace Owens interview is a really good example where he's like, I don't need you as a woman telling me that. And it's like, whoa, dude, what's your issue? And he pointed out, he says, who's going to Nazi Nick Fuentes, basically saying a woman would never touch me and all of this other stuff. He has issues with women that is ever present. It's very weird. It's very bizarre.
Psyching up young men to think the way he is a good way of doing things, and that it's like he is not a friend of his own cause, right? If his job is to, build a mass movement of Republicans that oppose Israel and oppose Israeli domination of the Republican Party, he's doing a very, very bad job of it. And in fact, he's making young men who take that position as unattractive and isolated as he possibly can. And I see him as a very, very negative force. I just don't think Nick Fuentes plays a good role at all.
That's his job.
Yeah.
I think Nick Fuentes, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think Nick Fuentes is in it to build a coalition against Israel.
Yeah.
I think Nick Fuentes is in it for a business model, and he's able to bring in a group of incels like him that can see the world in a particular way and that functions in that way. And you can build a coalition in order to have a living in a channel. I think it's that. I don't know if he's in it for the cause per se. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you might be right. And I think that there are other forces that are using him. This is a way to control dissent. And I've noticed this, Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party is someone I really look up to. She organized the Rage Against the War Machine Party, or the Rage Against the War Machine demonstration in Washington, D.C. and all of that. That was like the best thing the Libertarian Party has ever done, in my opinion. But in order to do that, who was her main opponent? All these libertarian influencers, all these podcasts and YouTube channels by libertarians that are kind of like Nick Fuentes. I mean, they're not, racist in the way that Nick Fuentes is racist, but they call themselves libertarians, and they talk about gossip and rumors, and they harass people and all of that. And oh my God, you can't do Rage Against the War Machine. And they had like a whole campaign against Rage Against the War Machine, demanding this speaker be removed and demanding that, and then, and in a lot of ways, these people were accommodated. Speakers were pushed out to please them and stuff, and they still didn't support it, right? And it's just like, this is how they control dissident spaces, is they kind of create these and I don't think these people are paid agents or whatever. I think they just find people and they use social media to manipulate, and they create a layer of like shock jock kind of people that dominate certain dissident spaces, that declare war on any real organizing, any real serious effort to change things, they go after, and they just create this fandom on the internet, of people talking trash and, and they're concerned about building their fandom, building their audience. How many clicks and shares am I getting, etc. And that's what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about actually building a movement that'll change the world. In the lead up to the Rage Against the War Machine, there were so many of these influencers that were speaking there. And I didn't speak at Rage Against the War Machine, because we were official endorsers and sponsors of it. But, I figured, there was so much drama. It's just whatever. We had a reception afterwards. And, but I was in touch with various influencers. They were all texting me about, oh, they're mad this other influencer is there. Oh, this person shouldn't be there. They're cringe. And I can't be seen with this person. I'm at a rally with this person. And it was just all this personal vanity of like, who am I going to be seen with? And that'll then cause people on the internet to say I'm this or that, and I won't get as many likes. And social media is one of the most effective mind control operations we've ever seen. It really is, right? And that, like Charlottesville, when they did the Charlottesville alt-right rally, it was just a collection of influencers. There was no like organizations there, right? It was just a collection of influencers from the alt-right who mobilized their audiences to get there. If you look at, influencer politics is very toxic, right? The internet brands are not political organizations, right? And that the state knows what they're doing. And the people who build very popular internet brands, they're artificially boosted. They have troll farms of people who pump their stuff out there and all of that. And they're not sincere, and they're just building internet brands. They're not building real organizations. And that's a problem in libertarian circles. That's a problem on the right. It's a problem in communist and left spaces. It needs to be acknowledged for what it is. And that, this is all very, very dangerous, I would argue, because these, social media, you don't know where that Patreon money is coming from. It could be coming from anybody, right? And you don't know, and a lot of these forces, they're not concerned about who's using them or who might be nudging them. They're concerned about their income, which is coming from social media, the revenue coming in, and they're concerned about beating some other influencer who's a rival of theirs. And they have little fights among themselves that are not serious. They're just about, I don't know, they're substanceless. They're about, I'm good, you're bad. I've dabbled in this milieu. I had a debate with Maoist Rebel News, Jason and Ruhe, and I started the debate, and I was trying to start the debate by saying, like, what do we want people to learn from the debate? He didn't want to talk about the debate. He just wanted to talk. He wanted people to learn that I'm bad and he's good from the debate. That's 90% of this streamer bro stuff, is no one learns anything. There's no real politics that's being learned. It's all just, I'm the good influencer. You should buy from me and not from the other guy. And this guy's a pedo, and this guy's a Nazi, and this guy's a, and it's just, it's substanceless. It's about personalities. It's not about politics. Nobody learns anything. And it's a big problem.
Cynicism. Forgive my deep cynicism on this. Forgive it. Yeah. Please forgive it in advance.
Yeah.
I have done the internet for like a decade. In fact, they always say, well, Jamal's an OG. And I was like, well, dude, I don't know how 100,000 subs. How can you be an OG, right? I will tell you, it's the same pressures that are on building a business are the same pressures that are on YouTubers. You would know this too, just because, like you said, you've delved into this. You need to be able to support yourself. You need to be able to, the audience may hate me saying this, but the audience is a fickle mistress. And depending upon your brand, quote unquote, meaning what is this person known for? Whether they believe it or not, whether they're true believers or not, what are they known for? Are they on the left? Are they on the right? Are they libertarian? Are they socialist? Are they whatever? You can't go against your brand. You could, but that is going to adversely affect your business interests. So on some level, your brand becomes your business, and you fit within a lane because you've grown people around you around that brand. So it's not like I'm selling hotcakes, right? Okay, I have a hotcake formula. People love it. They're buying my hotcakes. If I change my hotcake formula, maybe they don't buy it. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I have no way to know. But those hotcakes in this particular case, and the ingredients of those hotcakes is your political identity. Those people, when they are like, oh, I don't want to associate with this person, they're effectively saying my audience will hate the fact that I am on stage with that person, and it would somehow ding my brand by being so. Now, if your whole point is, look, I want political change and I want to function in this way, then you don't care, right? You go on that stage and you make that case, and you come back to your audience and explain why. And if your audience has been there for a long time and they know you, they will forgive you for it. But the fact is, they need to forgive you for it. It's not just the person can function outside of the box to which they've created for themselves, and the audience to which they've brought around to themselves. The audience is a fickle mistress. Sites can be destroyed. From their point of view, I earn my money in this. I build my house in this. I pay for my car in this. I pay for my kids in this. I pay for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get your take. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
That these people are acting as if they want some kind of political movement and acting as if they want to see some kind of political change. But everything that they're doing runs counter to the political change that they vocally say they want to see.
Yep.
I'm saying they don't care about the political change. It's all about brand. That's what I'm saying. The overwhelming majority of people who you see online are doing the job. No more, no less. That's cynical. I know that, God, man, I know that's cynical, and I know that sucks. Because you would think that, well, that guy said he's a libertarian, and that guy said he's pushing for these things. And then when he gets the opportunity to do something to show it, he's against it. And it's like, okay, well, why is he against it? This makes no sense.
Yep.
It's a brand. It's the way they make money. It's the way they earn. I don't know what's in Nick Fuentes' heart, so don't get me wrong. Candace Owens, I always thought she was playing a role, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. Yeah, I don't take these people as being anything but YouTubers.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible, but it's true. And I agree.
That's why my organization, the Center for Political Innovation, we are not a brand. We are a real organization. We get real stuff done. And if you look at the end of every year, I go over like we did this, and we are not a brand, right? I might get a little bit of income from the streams or whatever, but it's not the primary source of my income, and it never will be. And we're building a real organization to get real stuff done. And we don't want to be an internet brand. We want to be a network of people to carry out real operations for anti-imperialism. That's why we sponsored the Rage Against the War Machine rally. That's why we've been having those big demonstrations to support Ibrahim Traore. We've been out in the streets with banners of Ibrahim Traore. That's why, I'm headed to Detroit. I'm going to be distributing in bulk, thousands of copies of this book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For, at the Palestine Convention in Detroit this weekend. So cool. Yeah. Me and Noah from Boston, we're making the drive and we're headed to Detroit to distribute those pamphlets. We're trying to build a real organization. And building a real organization is something that gets you targeted in a lot of ways. I mean, the state is much more threatened by that, if you build a real organization than if you just are on the internet talking, right? And I mean, the internet is rigged, right? It's rigged. And that's the thing is like what you said about it's a brand and all of that. And what's so scary about that is like, it's not simply the power of the market. Our enemy is sitting there, at YouTube, and they can decide. So if you're building a brand and your whole thing is about building a brand, you're putting yourselves, I mean, it's not even the power of the consumer with their dollars. It's the power of the enemy sitting behind the control room at YouTube or in Twitter and deciding. And we saw what they did during the elections. We saw, it's been revealed, the Twitter files, our enemy has total control over who goes viral, who doesn't, and all of that. So, it is frustrating that people that are in dissident movements that call themselves libertarians, call themselves socialists or communists, you're literally letting your enemies pick your leaders for you. That's what you're doing. If you follow who's popular on the internet and you judge that, you're literally letting the enemy pick your leader for you. I mean, that's what you're doing. It's not simply, who's popular online. It's that you're not just trying to please the crowd. You're trying to please the controllers, behind,
algorithm.
The algorithmic controllers that sit there. And it was revealed, they revealed in congressional testimony, Elon Musk released the files. They were deciding certain people, got suppressed, certain people got promoted. The FBI was sitting down with Twitter and making decisions. So that's something these people really should think about, right? I mean, there's a reason that certain brands are suppressed and certain brands are built up. And that's why Nick Fuentes is really concerning to me. And I'm telling people that he may lead people in a very, very dangerous place, because that's what needs to happen in order to psych up the Trump base for regime change wars or turn people in the Trump camp to be more pro-Israel, et cetera. So I'm urging people to be very, very cautious. That's what I'm urging them to do.
One thing before I let you go, there seems to be friction between, God, man, there's so much in that I want to touch. The Communist Party. Jason Hinkle is in Moscow.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, leading the Communist Party apparently in the States.
Yeah,
and
whatever.
you get what is his name? The Tricontinental Institute. Prasad.
Okay.
Prashad. I can't think of his name. It's like
BJ
Prashad.
Prashad. Yeah.
Yes. He even comes out and says, "Look, I regret going to this event or going on this show. I didn't realize how much friction this was creating." I got to be honest with you. I didn't even know who Jason Hinkle was. He just came out of the blue one day, and apparently got super popular despite just coming out of nowhere, left field.
Yeah, I have to just stay away from this. I can't touch this. My circles and these circles have intersected in the past, but at this point we don't cooperate with each other. And, so I just.
What is the issue with this? Because look, I don't understand.
Well, it's fandom. Like, it's just fandom. It's just internet fandom. That's all it is, and it's not real organizing like we're doing with the Center for Political Innovation. And, and I mean, that's just all I can say about that, and that there's been an endless effort to draw me into drama with these people. On the one hand, it's, oh, why don't you just join with these people? They've been endlessly hostile to me. On the other hand, it's, you're, these people attacking and harassing me and attacking, saying awful things about me and spreading rumors and stuff. And it's just, I just really, it's unfortunate, but, it's just, these are spaces I just need to stay away from. That's just really all I can say about it is, at one point I've been friendly to various people, and this is a problem, is that there are various people that I've been willing to work with, and then the internet just, tells them, oh, you're not allowed to, you know what I mean? And that's, and it's like, who's manipulating this? That's kind of what I'm saying, and it's kind of like, whenever anything real comes along, like Rage Against the War Machine or whatever, the internet suddenly says, no, you can't do that. No. So, I mean, if there's a political disagreement between those two forces, that's one thing, but I don't even see it as political. I just see this as brand internet building and drama. And, and it just, I'm building a real organization. We had our convention in Chicago. We had hundreds of people there. We've been in the streets. We were at the inauguration with our only Trump, only peace can make America great again banner. And we have a lot of people, and we led the U.S. delegation to the World Youth Festival. We were there for Uhuru. I mean, the fact that these forces have done nothing for Uhuru, right? And the fact that and this is my criticism of all communists in America, Vijay Prashad, other people, whatever, right? Is that there's a group of black socialists. The FBI raids their homes in the middle of the night, indicts them. They're facing 15 years in prison for their speech about Russia, right? And these people did nothing for them. Nothing. They didn't go to their court dates. They didn't raise money. There were maybe some tweets or whatever, and why did they not help them? What was the reason? Well, the internet said that they're the same as this other group called Black Hammer that's been very badly canceled on the internet. And I'm just like, the fact these people can't even defend one of their own. This is a black socialist organization raided by the FBI, not accused of false crimes. They didn't frame them for murder. They didn't frame them for drugs. They accused them of spreading anti-imperialist speech. That should be the focus. Every organization should immediately be out there saying, no, we're going to stand with them, because if they set a precedent to go after them, they'll go after us, and the fact that they didn't do that, the left, the communist groups didn't do that. I mean, they couldn't bring themselves to stand with them because, this on the internet, I heard they're a cult, I heard they're this or that, that just shows how completely toxic, these people are. Right. CPI, I was at their trial in Tampa, Florida. I was at the opening of the trial. I was there with Jill Stein and others. I gave a statement to the press. I was at the verdict, or I was at the sentencing. I was there, with Scott Ritter, with others, giving statements. We had a press conference at the United Nations about their case. I raised their case with President Putin because it's a serious thing. If the FBI and the government can shut down the Uhuru for their political views, that basically, in effect, makes it illegal to be an anti-imperialist. And that was something we should all focus on. these people don't care about that. They're concerned about being internet famous, right? And so I just,
Those are different
you
things,
can't
yeah.
take them seriously. They're not serious. And that's, I guess, what concerns me is that there are a lot of people who think that these organizations are real. They think that these fandoms are real, serious organizations. If they were serious, they would have been supporting the Uhuru movement, and they didn't, right? They're just internet fandoms dressed up as, pretending, in some cases masquerading as real organizations. But if they were real organizations, they would have supported Uhuru, and they didn't do that. So, that's that.
Caleb Maupin.
So
always appreciate you, man. Always. And by the way, I wasn't trying to draw you into
no, you're good.
drama.
You're good.
I honestly know nothing about it, which is kind of why I guess I fell into it and just asked you about it. I know nothing about it. I heard about it from a friend of mine who pointed out that the feds seemingly are after them, or like it's interested in some way.
Yeah.
And so I honestly don't know. I just don't know. Like I'm bewildered by the whole thing. And like I said, Hinkle came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I was talking to I think it was Kim Iverson. Kim Iverson said she thinks he's a Fed, but she thinks he's an asset or something like that. And her and I were getting into the reasons why. But
yeah, I just for a while he was friendly to me, and he became very viciously hostile. So yeah. I just whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know what he's doing or whatever, but it has nothing to do with me, and I'm just doing a separate thing. What I've noticed is that, first of all, he's been viciously hostile to me, but then I've noticed that people that don't like him continue to put me and him in the same category, which is bizarre, right? And that, I mean, yeah, and it's just like, you realize this person is viciously hostile to me, has said repeated all kinds of nasty rumors and gossip, and attacked me on a very vicious personal level. Like, we're not the same person. I did make a video. I am not Jackson Hinkle. And I know that made people really mad, but I am not Jackson Hinkle. I mean, I am not. I am my own person, and that I continue, it's bizarre, right? On the one hand, his audience, has been psyched up to hate me. On the other hand, people think I'm him. I'm not him. So I'm doing my own thing, and I'm doing something separate. And so,
again, just to be clear, I had no idea that there was beef between you two. I didn't even know that there was all of this is new.
There's no logical reason for it. So yeah, it's just, I just want to just stay away from it, because there's no logical reason for any of this. This is just fandom, and it's just silly. So
it's annoying. Yeah. Caleb, you are fantastic. Stay fantastic.
Sure thing.
Thank you for this, man. You always give good breakdowns. Look, I tell pretty much everybody I can agree or disagree with my guests. You give damn good breakdowns. And I thank you for it. And your knowledge of this stuff is always a fascination to me. Or no, fascination, not the right word for it.
Always great to join you. So
yeah, I always appreciate it. But Caleb Maupin, he is speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst, author. The book that he just showed, Why the Houthis Matter. Where can people get that?
Yeah, it's anywhere books are sold. Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? All about the history of the Houthi movement in Yemen.
Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? Check the book out. This is just the drop of this knowledge of things around the world. You can also get him at Center for Political Innovation. I need the website for that.
CPIUSA.org. CPIUSA.org.
Okay. Caleb, thank you for this.
Sure
Always appreciate it, man. You be safe, okay?
You too. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. Caleb Maupin, such a great guest. I'm fortunate for him coming on the show. Always appreciate him doing so. Let's go to chats, since we have come to the